Tales of Symphonia, the fifth Tales of game to be released coming out in 2003, on the GameCube becoming a cult classic, as well as putting the series on the map for future installments, as well as getting a really bad sequel. Symphonia got multiple releases, from the PlayStation 2 and 3, Xbox, Steam, and the first one I played on the Switch. I know on the Switch, that version of the game is the worst. But here's the thing, I didn't know that when I started doing my playthrough. For some of you that don't know, let me fill you in. In the original, there's shattering glass that happens when you start a battle. And for some reason on the Switch, there's this long load time when you were to enter or leave the field. And keep in mind, you leave and go to the field a lot in this game. And I mean a lot, that's like your road hub for going to dungeons and towns. Also, it got missing dialogue. Well, literally, I found this out not too long ago, because I was watching someone else play the game. And they actually mentioned that it has missing dialogue on the Switch. So that's another thing I found out. And I also noticed glitchy frames throughout the game, which honestly I think it was like only one time, but that was only one instance, but it wasn't too bad. So suffice to say, it's a mess, but at least it's still very playable. So while I'm going through my experiences of the game, I will keep these things in mind while I'm talking about it. And after talking about my experiences with Tales of Symphonia, I want to give Symphonia a comparison to Tales of the Abyss. Since I finished both games, and people either considered Abyss as the better game or Symphonia as the better game out of all the Tales games. So I want to give my 2 cents on it, as a fan of both games and the Tales series. With all that out of the way, let's talk about my Tales of Symphonia remastered playthrough. Also, I'll be revealing spoilers in the game if you have not played yet, so you have been warned. Proceed at your own risk, thank you very much. We start off the game with Lloyd, asleep in school as Rain wakes him up. He is the main protagonist of the game, and as the story goes on, he is exiled from his village, going to help his friend, Colette, and her journey to regenerate the world. And as the story goes on, he becomes the party leader. As of Colette is chosen to regenerate the world, by going to different ruins and temples and unlocking the seals for her to acquire angel powers and for her to climb the Tower of Salvation, and bring peace to Silverant. As for Genius, he is basically exiled from the village with Lloyd, due to the fact of what he did by going to this human ranch where the villagers are not supposed to go. And apparently, they went after him and Lloyd, and apparently that's where they got banished by the village during that point. He is also apparently a half-elf, which is actually pretty neat, along with his sister Rain, who apparently goes with Colette on the journey without Lloyd and Genius at the start of the game. As the game goes on, you got Genius become best friends with Mythos, and also has a little bit of a crush with Persea. As well as Rain, who learned healing arts to prevent others from dying tragically again. And then we got Kratos, the so-called mercenary that helps Colette and the party to get to the Tower of Salvation at the start of the game. Even though he betrays Prey Ray afterwards, he secretly tries to help him out where he can throughout the game, as he wants to help his son, Lloyd, and wish for his own death. Shuna is an assassin from Mizuho who is sent to kill Colette to prevent the regeneration of the world. During the time of her trying to assassinate Colette apparently befriended her, and she began traveling with the party. Actually, fun fact I want to throw out there, Shuna actually has an ancestor from Tales of Symphonia, whose name is Yuzu, who's actually surprisingly is the chief of the ninja village of that game. And oh boy, we got Solus Wilder, the chosen of Tethe'ala. That's right, there's 2 chosens. One's from Silverrun, which is Colette, and Solus is basically chosen of Tethe'ala between the 2 worlds. He is very flirtatious at times, to the point of being annoying during the game. Actually, correct that, at times it's more like all the time. But he does help the party when it counts, especially when you're in Tower of Salvation, fighting Yggdrasil and Phenuma, depending on what route you chose. Persea is a woodcutter from Osset, who also has a sister named Alicia. She is important, trust me. She was experimented on for her body to become a host of a Crux crystal. It increased her strength and halted her physical growth, while it suppressed her emotions. Regal is a convict, who is later revealed as the president of the Locarno Company. He also had a relationship with Persea's sister, Alicia, who Regal unintentionally killed, which is why he became a convict. Like in all Tales of games, the characters are all unique with their own character development, as they are fun to watch and see grow as they interact with other characters in and out of the party. To Colette become the Chosen, Celes and Kratos' betrayals and what comes afterwards, Shuna overcoming her trauma fighting Volt, to Lloyd finding out who his dad is. And all very fun and well-rounded cast of characters. As for visuals in the remastered, compared to the original, it has a lot more details, with huge improvements to characters and overall environment, as the blurring and sharpness is taken away from the PS2 and GameCube versions. Though when it comes down to it, I'm not too picky about the visuals, though it's always good to see games getting enhanced and improved visuals as it is pleasing for the eyes. Music is one of the most important things for a game, as you need good music to capture the towns, dungeons, and the events of the game. And like most Tales games, this one really nails it, as well as some of the music really stands out from the others, like the hymnal theme, or the serious music when Celius captures Colette. Overall, really good music, and the game really can't say enough about it. As far as voices go, I really enjoy them too, as I really don't have much to say, as they are all great. None of them made me want to scream or just pull my hair out listening to them. But if there's one thing I have to change, it's the skits, as I wish there is voice acting in them, because at times when I'm reading, I'll be reading slower than intended, and it will just jump to the next lines, as I'm basically wrapping up, and I have to improvise or go on without continuing. Or I'll be reading too fast, and I have to wait a couple seconds for the lines to catch up and move on to the next one. Luckily in the newer games they actually fixed that, which thank goodness, but this game really annoys me with that sometimes. Same thing with Tales of Abyss, but still annoying. I also think it's cool, as some of the voice actors play characters I've seen before, but I never realized it was them. Like Scott McPhail, the voice of Lloyd, is best known for his role in Teen Titans as Robin, as well as Bucky Barnes from the Avengers of Earth Mightiest Heroes. As well as Colin, or Shugnessy, I don't even know how to say that, oh my lord, just try pronouncing that. The voice of Genius that plays Tails in the new Sonic movies, as well as Aino in Naruto, and Jazz Phantom from Danny Phantom. And Kara Walgreen, the voice of Rain, actually plays Saber from Fate Stay Nights, and Ash from Final Fantasy XII. As well as Jennifer Howe, the voice of Sheena, also plays Samus from the Metroid Prime series. And Sarah Palmer from Halo Spartan Assault, as well as Halo 4 and 5. There is a link in the descriptions if you want to check out more of the cast, but I'm not going to go over the rest of them in the video, as I kind of feel that would just make it too long. But really great to see that some of these voice actors play roles I'm familiar with. When it comes to the hub in most Tales games, you have what's called the field. In this game, it is Tetheala and Silverrun. They are two separate roads with their own dungeons and towns and locations, like in Silverrun has a desert and some mountain ranges, while Tetheala has a snowland and a lot of forests and some floating islands throughout the sky. While there are many locations, the way to reach them varies to some extent. Like in the early game, you start off with Noish, a friendly monster that will let you get on his back for faster travel as long as you don't go near any mountain ranges. And when you reach Tetheala, you will get a boat to travel throughout the sea, but you can only land the boat in docks. Yeah, that's right, you can't land it anywhere else. And to make matters worse, the controls are really bad, especially when it comes to the steering. As you turn one way, it will go a little further than you want, so you have to aim it just right just to make it. But luckily you don't have to use it for too long, as you get the Reards, which is the flying machines in this game, that are powered by Volt, so you can travel throughout the sky in both Tetheala and Silverrun. And in my opinion, when it comes to flying in games, it's always the best way to travel, especially for the Tales series. The vast majority of dungeons in this game requires a sorcery ring, as it helps to solve the puzzles, as you can only cast balls of fire at the start, but going through other dungeons lets you gain new powers, from shooting an electric ball to becoming small and even calling animals. It has so much functions that I swear every time I was so entranced to why I get next. But when it comes to dungeons themselves and their puzzles, I will either really like them or really hate them, as the ones I like in the Earth Temple you get to help the Gomets to progress throughout the temple, or when it comes to Torped's mines, as it requires a sorcery ring to bomb the walls and stuff as you explore, and a lightning temple as you attempt to solve the blocks. And what I really like is the Mere Forest, not as the dungeon itself, because I generally just hate the animal sections of the dungeon, to explore, as it leads to Tread Woods, an Town which was later turned into Himdall. I just like Easter eggs like this, that have stuff from other games, make it into the main story, especially from the Tales series, as most games are technically in their own separate worlds, and are not connected together. So when the games are connected, and you play both of them, or seen in my case, that's great to see those references in other games. Especially I like the fact that Fantasia is a prequel to Symphonia when it comes to the world of Azelia. Fun fact with the name of the combined world of Tetheala and Silverrun is Azelia, if anybody is wondering. And when it comes to the dungeons I hate, they were very annoying in some ways or others. Like the battle cry Mesolim. I can't even say that properly, that's so complicated. It had you, which needed you to read scriptures to hit the windmills in the right order, which I did not did. I mostly just guessed like 5 times and I figured it out. But it's still very annoying that I didn't really understand the scriptures, so I just end up doing that. Then the sewers. You have to backtrack so much in that dungeon. There's 3 different rooms, and you have to backtrack like all 3 of them. It's so annoying, as you need to end up pushing blocks from one end of the room to the other, and drop them down to the bottom floor, which you have to go all the way down to a different room and go in, as you're just trying to figure out this puzzle, which is generally not a fun way to play a dungeon. Then it comes to Temple of Darkness, as oh boy, I just hate the Shadow Fragments. Given Shadow is an easy boss of himself, but the Shadow Fragments really just irritated me so much, as they would just run away from me as soon as I touched them, and would take forever just to actually follow me, as they just attempt to avoid you for like a minute. And then I think the worst time that monsters really got on my nerves was in the Tower of Salvation escape, as monsters are always trying to respawn in the rooms, as I exit and leave one room to the other, and they just respawn, as I'm trying to figure out this puzzle. Wow, every corner has a monster. Like generally, I would go like 5 feet and there's another monster just there. And most of the time it would just hit me. So I generally just got annoyed to the point where I just end up running away most of the time in that dungeon. Though the cyan bases are not that bad. I think the only one that I really had a problem with was Palma Costa, Human Wrench, as you need to figure out where to go in the wrench maze, as I just had no idea what I was supposed to do for the whole time. Apparently you were supposed to use the radar, but I didn't understand how, and there's really no clues given to you about how to do the maze. But at least the Asgard wrench wasn't as bad, but really unique, as you split up the party, which was a great idea, as you were first to experiment with the other party members. Though they dropped the ball with that Celia wrench, as they make you do the same thing in the Asgard wrench. But the dialogue during the event made it sound like that one team would save the prisoners, and the others will end up running into Forcesis. Even Louis said that he didn't want to be the one saving the prisoners, as one of them really hates him, so he chooses to go with the other team. But both groups end up going to save the prisoners and then split up to fight Forcesis. Which at that point I'm like, why? I just don't see the point in that. But I really like the remote island wrench, as I use the ring's power, which is sound in this dungeon, to get higher up in the tower, and use it to warp to different locations throughout the dungeon. When it comes to towns, most of them are really great to explore, as I really like Flanor and Triad, as I just tend to like the towns in different regions. I also like Miso, as the idea of a hidden ninja village just sounds cool, but really I just think most towns are great. Though I think I really have to like Loon. Even though I didn't do anything with Loon, the fact that I learned stuff after my playthrough about how if you go there before its destruction, you'll meet Sheen up there playing with kids, was really sweet. But there is a side quest for the town, for I believe after forming a pact with Loon and Asuka, as I went there prior, but I didn't end up saying anybody, as there's supposed to be Petro there to start rebuilding the town, while you're able to help him give him money for the restoration efforts, which would have been neat to see. If you are enjoying the video, and think I should do more videos of me talking about my experiences through the game of every playthrough I do, consider hitting that like button, and leave me a comment. I don't really have any ideas to call these, since I don't really want to call them reviews, as I just really want to talk about my experiences. And also while you're down there, just consider hitting that subscribe button. As we move to battles, the movement for the fights really caught me off guard, as you can only move towards and away from the target enemies. As I only play games that came after Tales of Symphonia, I always have an option to use the free run, where it will allow me to run anywhere on the battlefield, not just towards and away from the enemies. In the early fields of the playthrough, I was really worried of how I might manage this. But over time I got used to controls. My only grievances with the controls is that I can't escape the enemies if it's too big. If I get into a corner, I am screwed. Though while movement is a big factor to fights, characters' way of fighting are also a factor as well, as each character have their own way of fighting with their own respective weapons and use of arts, which are the skills in this game. Like Colette with her chakrams that she used to throw at enemies, and depending on where you're at the game, she would have angel skills. Just use a Kindamiya, I have no idea how to say that, I'll be real, which is a Japanese toy, as he used to hit enemies with the ball and use it for a source of his attacks and spells. As for Ren, she is a must for the party, as she wields staffs that cast healing for the group like a nurse and resurrection, that brings the party back from the dead without using life bottles. Kratos and Solus both use swords and daggers to attack, as well as they are also able to heal the party. Sheena also uses cards that are armed with magic-infused shields. She is also a summoner, where she can summon spirits for a strong brief attack when she hits her overlimit and a heavy amount of TP. Due to the defensive story, Rigo made an oath. Due to this oath, he fights with his feet and uses greaves to enhance his kicks. And Persea, who also uses an axe for close-range fights, as she and Lloyd are the only two party members that don't use any kind of magic-based arts. When it comes to Lloyd, he used dual blades to fight his enemies, and he has no magic arts to use, which is probably why I like to play as him so much in the playthrough, as he allows me to fight in the front lines while I don't have to cast spells, as I want to be focusing on laying the attacks on the enemies. When it comes to items in battle, stocking up on Joes is important, as apple Joes that restore 30 and lemon Joes that restore 60% of your HP, while orange do 30 and pineapple do 60% restoring your TP. Then there are the Melon and Miracle Gels that restore both HP and TP, as well as life bottles, the only way to revive a party member without using ranged resurrection or coalesce using sacrifice. And with Magic's Lens, you can also keep tabs on the monster's HP and TP, though I will mainly just use him for bosses. As most monsters are pretty standard, just keep leveling up at a steady pace, and most monsters won't be a problem. When it comes to bosses on the other hand, there are a lot of them that will make you struggle, as a good amount of them took me several tries just to beat. The first several bosses, Fidare, Expelia, and Buta, are not that challenging, but I was caught off guard with the Tri-Ruin fight, as I didn't realize each seal you would go to is a boss fight. To top that off, I didn't realize there was a hidden save point in the dungeon till much later in the game, when I went back to go fight Ifrit. So I had to do the whole dungeon twice just to beat the boss, due to the fact that I died, because I didn't realize there was a hidden save point. Though the rest of the seal fights aren't too difficult, some of them are challenging, though the first one did set a standard to what to expect throughout the temples and ruins, going to every seal. Then when you get to Palmacosta and do some of the story, you end up fighting Kilia, a Thessalian, and let me tell you, what she does is mess up, as she pretends to be the mayor's young doctor and brutally kills him as he starts to help the party, revealing that she killed his doctor. Yeah, it gets dark. Like, oh my goodness, I was not expecting that when that happened at that point of the game. Even though she's a harder fight at the beginning of the game, it is not compared to bosses later and at the ending of the game. As far as early Thessalian bosses go, Magnus wasn't too difficult, though Kafar, that one gave me a run for my money, as it took me several times to defeat him, as I have to deal with 3 energy stones and him at the same time. Luckily, Kafar hardly moves. If he does, he moves very slowly, and mainly only focus on casting. Though his attacks aren't really a problem by himself, it's the fact that the energy stones are with him, as they tend to sap you when you get close, and they will also gang up on you. Not to mention, you fight him with 3 party members, not 4 like most fights, while it's him and 3 energy stones. Luckily for Ceaseless and Redoubt, in the later game wasn't as hard as Kefar though. Kefar was probably by far the hardest Thessalian I had to fight in the game, not counting Pneuma. When it comes to fighting summoning spirits, most of them are challenging, for sure, but luckily most of them I took out on the first try, like Udine, Ifrit, Gnome, and Cilius. Surprisingly for Self, I didn't really struggle as much as I was anticipating on her than the other 4 I just mentioned, as there are 3 of them, and I thought it was going to be a little bit harder because there's 3. As I finished her fight, I kind of feel like Ifrit was a little bit harder though, and something that I was not aware while I was playing this playthrough, thanks to a commenter, was that you can actually fight Self and Ifrit early in the game, as soon as you got Udine, as they are apparently a lot easier to fight than later on in the game after going to Tithiala. But by far the easiest spirit for me was Shadow, which was great for me because his temple puzzle was really bad, while Oscar and Luna were part of the hardest spirits I had to face, as I had to fight them at the same time, as they both are very strong, and I think that's the only time that I actually had to refight one of the summoned spirits. And then we got the Tower of Salvation fights. As most of the Tower of Salvation fights are scripted in one specific location, besides Remno, for if you win or lose, the story would just continue. Though Remno was easy by himself, you will end up having to fight Kratos right after him. And let me tell you, he is one strong opponent at that point in the game. Luckily, it seems like they were intending for you to lose that fight. As I died that fight, I was trying to think of how I'd be able to defeat him, while the game just kept moving as that stunned me. While get just so, the main villain of the game actually appears, and wanted to have a piece of me himself. As I fought him, I only did like 1 to 10% of damage on him, and keep in mind, most monsters in that point of the game will do a lot more than that. So I was like, it's just scripted, just kill me now at that point, just kill me. Like, if that wasn't scripted, I wouldn't even know how to defeat him. Like, my goodness, I think I would have just given up on the game right then and there if that was not a scripted fight for Yggdrasil, because oh my lord, that was a hard fight if I had to fight him. But you get another scripted fight with Kratos, at a much later point in the game. As I was close to defeating him, he only had like 3,000 left from his 25,000 HP points. As I used up all my life bars just for him to finish me off. As I was just so close to defeating him too. I was shocked for it to be another scripted fight. I wish this fight wasn't scripted because I was so close to defeating him, and the fact that the story moved on, and it sucks that I just die as the story just continue, as I would have preferred to try again against that fight. Like Kratos' second fight, there was other memorable fights that I just kinda want to talk about. Like the defense system in the Topaz Mines, as you have to keep an eye on the machines. As well as her fault for story reasons that makes this fight more hype, with Corrin's death and Sheena forcing him to form a pact with her. Definitely one of the best scenes of that character I've seen in the game. As well as the dragon fight a little afterwards, where you fight like 3 baby dragons and 1 giant dragon. As the fight sadly got spoiled to me a little, just by looking at the Cynthias, trying to figure out where to go. Though I didn't realize how crazy that fight was going to be, like just listen to my reaction at the start of the fight. We have to fight 3! I see 3! Are you kidding me? I only saw 2 a minute ago, that's not fair. Oh lord. Baby dragons, wing dragon. Yeah, take your pick. You want poison A? You want poison B? You want poison C over here? Just ahead? Even though those are great fights I like, I hate the final fight with Pneuma, as it just felt sluggish for the whole fight, or maybe it was just me, I don't know. The enemies were slow but very annoying, as it will attack the party member who are finishing their casting, and immediately cancel it when they attack. That makes it way more annoying than what it needed to be. And Pneuma didn't really help much either, as she was like Kafar, as she would be casting spells to attack, but her attacks are a lot more deadly than Kafar. Not to mention, after I was done recording, I learned that there is a status that makes it hard for you to heal when your portrait is red, as it was caused by the enemies Pneuma had, and doesn't help that Yggdrasil was right after her. So you better hope you are in a good state on items, HP, and TP, as he will destroy you. But at least Yggdrasil isn't as hard as Pneuma. Still, the Pneuma is probably one of the worst fights you can do in this game. As the rest of the final fights of the game, Ocean and Kratos didn't go as hard as Pneuma, and Yggdrasil was a little harder than the fight right after her, but his second phase, I honestly consider that was a lot easier than his first. Luckily, that fight only took me 1 try, unlike Abyss where it took me several, but generally I consider Pneuma as one of the worst fights you could do in this game. When it comes to side quests in the Tales games, most of them tend to flesh out the characters. Even though I did 1 side quest in Symphonia, I thought it would be cool to go through some of the others that caught my interest, that I learned about after my playthrough. The only one I did though was Sheena vs Kushinoa. If you defeat him, he will attempt suicide, but Sheena and Lloyd will stop him, and he will decide to travel the world. Though if you don't defeat him, he will get angry, give you Corrin's bell back, and try the world saying get stronger and they will have a rematch as he leaves. As this is the only one I did throughout the playthrough, I did lost this fight. And the reason why I didn't retry this fight, as I didn't remember when I last saved, and I couldn't leave Misty Hall Village as there's no save point in the village during the event. So I just went ahead and continued the game after that point. As for Claire Dor, she was Palmacosa's Meredith's wife, as she turned into a monster in the game. After the events in Palmacosa, she escaped the city, and will run into the party numerous of occasions, before going to Tetheala. Though I learned even though she's a monster, she can be saved, as you need to go to Isolde to learn some sort of special healing spell that will save Claire from her monster form. And after saving her, she will just return back to Palmacosa. Actually, fun fact is that she becomes the mayor in the sequel game, but I don't think much people care about that actually, now that I think about it, due to the fact that how much the game sucks. But I love the fact that they find a cure for transformation if you explore more of Isolde. After Corrin's death in the Lightning Temple, you can bring Corrin's bell to Martello Temple and resurrect him, as he will want to be called Furious, the Summon Spirit of Hearts, for the rest of the game, as I found it really cool that they gave you a reason to go back to Martello Temple, not just a one and done area, and revive Corrin as well. And at the very end of the game, you have the opportunity to fight Maxwell, the ancient ruler of the elements. You can fight him on Axire after getting the Darius emblem. Mythos made a pact with him to keep Axire airbound, so Half-Elves would have a place to live. I find it really cool that he is in this game, as he has his own story in the form of Tales of Excelia. And he created Mila Maxwell for that game. I just thought that was really neat to bring up. At the start of the game, it makes you think it's your generic JRPG story of going to different areas to entering the Tales of Symphonia, as it also starts off slow. You get to the tower, I say is when it really starts picking up, as from there on out, I had to say, it tries to give you a surprise in every corner. As you learn from what the X-Spears are, to there's apparently 2 worlds and the trail at the tower. As you meet the main villain Yggdrasil, as it basically is a roller coaster once you get to the midway and ending parts of the game. As you make your way to the mid-game, I think the goals for the developers was really to get you confused, as you see the Renegade leader helping one of the 5 Grand Cardinals. As for what I understand at that point in the game, is that they are enemies, and yet they were helping each other to capture me. And during the time when you're in Tethiola, you learn that a half-elf race is looked down upon, as you try to save Rhine and Genus, as you run away from the king and the pope throughout Tethiola, while you end up meeting Mythos, while you're forming pacts with spirits, to split the 2 worlds, only for the great Carlon trait to appear and start destroying Silverrock, as you have to use the Monocan to defeat it. And once you made it to the late game, it hits the fan, pretty much, as the story gives you surprise after surprise after surprise, as you decide to enter the Tower of Salvation again, and fight Kratos, and afterwards end up fighting Yggdrasil as well, as it reveals Mythos was Yggdrasil the whole time. Like, honestly, I like the fact that Mythos was friendly at first, but to be frank, throughout the playthrough, I'm over here going, he's just so sus, as he got a rearm, but claims the renegades give it to him, and yet he wasn't even there when we were talking to them. And the fact that he gave us a flute and say, I don't know what it does, but it may save you. Like, I'm thinking to myself, that's just sus, right? Like saying, play it when you're in trouble. I don't know what will happen, but it might save you in the end. Like, honestly, really? Really? I think the only thing I was waiting for at the ending was Misa should change his form to Yggdrasil. And he does, when Lloyd finds out who his dad is, which is crazy of itself. Then I like the fact there's a secret relationship status in the game, as once you get to the end game, you get to Fëanor, and you have to pick between 3 characters that have the best relationship with you for the final parts of the game, as you climb up the Tower of Salvation, and what happens in Hamdar and Torrent Forest. And get this, Kratos can be one of these characters, that he can drastically change the events that can happen, as I learned with Celes, that he really does betray you if you pick Kratos, as you're end up going to kill Celes. And then Kratos becomes a party member for the rest of the game, which will have been cool to see, the father and son dynamic. But honestly sucks for Celes, as he was doing it for his sister. And another sad thing is that it's really hard to get Kratos in your first playthrough. As for what I learned, as he is the hardest to get the highest relationship due to how little time you play with him than everyone else. So my 3 picks were Colette, Rent, and Sheena, and honestly I have to pick Sheena, and I got her for the rest of the game. So as you climb up the tower, each character will get trapped or stuck as they continue to push you up the tower. And depending on the decision in Fëanor, it will be Celes or Kratos that saves everybody from dying, which is probably one of the best parts about that game. I really like that. Once defeating Origin, Darius Carlin will appear and destroy the Tower of Salvation, and you have to go all the way to Darius Carlin just to defeat Yggdrasil. And once he is defeated, the world is restored to its original form, and I really like this part as there wasn't enough mana to support the combined world, which is why the worlds were separated in the first place. I love this as it gives a nod to Fantasia, as in that game, Magi technology was depleting the mana of the world and was killing the world trade Martell. So the main villain was trying to stop this, as his home Darius Carlon was also doing the same thing, but that world was destroyed. And I learned this while watching Eruption Fame, Tales of Fantasia timeline video, as I didn't really want to play the game myself, though if you have time, as it's like an hour and 34 minutes. Links in the description if you want. He also did a 7-hour full-length Symphonia timeline video, so generally just go check him out. Those timeline videos are great, though I have to say the story is great, and I have to say it gives a big focus on the surprise factor than most Tales of games, I would have to say, as it tries to catch you off guard as stuff is revealed throughout the game. I think the only nitpick I had when it comes to the story is that I really hate Remno trick on Colette thinking that he is her father, as it just annoys me to no end that the first time learning about Remno might be asking, hey Colette, is that your father? As Remno is just right in front of him. And I mean, sure, I get why they want to have that in, but I mean, they couldn't put it in a skit or have them talking about it on the way to Martell's temple or something before that point to make it more believable. I mean, that just kind of annoyed me, to be honest, because Colette right after this goes, are you my father? I'm like, oh my lord, please. but it really just felt forced and rushed, in my opinion. But generally, that's like the only nitpick I really had, as I really enjoyed the story, as it is such a great game. For anyone who hasn't played Tales of the Abyss, I'm going to keep this section mostly spoiler-free. In 2005, Tales of the Abyss was released, developed by the same team that developed Symphonia, putting the game on PlayStation 2 and later on the 3DS, telling the story of Luke and the theme of the game of why am I alive and what is my purpose. Honestly, really great themes, as I had some of those questions when I was younger and sometimes I still do, as those themes mainly focus on Luke and his character development. And let me be clear, for those people who did play the game for only a couple of hours, but didn't like Luke as the main character, and then put the game down because of Luke, you are intended not to like him at the very start of the game. Like, honestly, he is an entitled asshole. Like, sorry for my language, but I even just don't like him at the start of the game. Like, heck, the side characters at the start of the game, like Tyr, Jade, and Guy, are what carry the game at the start. But as you play the game, an event will happen that Luke will do something really bad. Like, legit, him doing that made him go through like the 5 stages of grief, as later he decides that he has to change, to find atonement for what he has done. Like, he really becomes a lot better throughout the game, as they just don't stop pushing him. It makes me really like the character more than Lloyd, as Luke gets to start as one of the most hated Tales of protagonists, and become one of the best Tales characters of the series, as they just don't stop pushing the character. Really one of the greatest character developments in the Tales of series I've seen. And when it comes to music, for Tales of the Abyss, the opening theme Karma comes straight to my head, as it has 2 separate other versions, the meaning of burst for a specific fight during the game, and Mirror. And I have to say, these songs do not get old, especially Mirror, as they play during the moments Luke and Ash have, as they can't stand each other as their differences clash throughout the game. By far, I have to say, Mirror is probably one of my favorite songs that comes out of that game, as it just takes the weight of the scene and just carries it every time, as it fits with Luke during the story so well. Like, as they talk to each other, as Luke pretty much sees himself as he realizes nobody while trying to accept himself, Ash just over here just flat out hates him to the fact that how much he puts himself down when it comes to him and Ash, as well as the events of the story that makes Ash hate Luke. And I love it every time as Mirror just plays in these moments, as well as most of the Tales of the Abyss songs, like A Place in the Sun, Finishing the Promise, and one of the songs at the very ending of the game called Overflowing Emotions, Reunion. Even though Symphonia has great music, it just doesn't compare to when you have songs from Abyss like Mirror and the others that play in the game. But when it comes to battles, a lot has improved from Symphonia. Like, you have a gauge for your overlimit now, and you decide when to use it, not just it appearing randomly like it does in Symphonia. And this is the first time that free one was actually added to the games, where you can run any direction you want in the battles. And also the option to switch the characters in mid-battle. Like, I can be playing as Luke, but then I can decide, hey, I want to switch to another character, use their overlimit, attack, and then go back to Luke. Like, it's just a welcome change from Symphonia, which I really like, and I really miss while I was playing the game. But when it comes to the capacity cores, or C cores for short, it's items in the game that you can equip to the characters, so they can learn new skills, but you only get 1 skill per C core, so you have to basically switch it out a lot during the game. And then field of phonons are circles on the ground that appear during the battles, which each circle you can use earth, fire, wind, water, lightning, or dark type arts in the circles, as they release stronger versions of the arts that you have. It wouldn't be bad, but the circles appeared randomly throughout the battle with different elements on it, so it makes it difficult to get the edge using it at times. This is probably why I like Symphonia battle system more, as I can learn new arts just by attacking and improving my skills. but when it comes to the bosses in Tales of the Abyss, I have to say I only struggle on a few of them, as I tend to have an easier time with those bosses than Symphonia bosses, as most of those bosses are actually a lot harder in Symphonia than Abyss. Like, I can only think of a few times I had a hard time in Abyss with the bosses, probably when I had to fight a Scolipede, Sync one of the God Generals, and the final boss that took me a couple days just to beat. So if you're looking for a Tales game with challenging fights, I will definitely recommend Symphonia. And as far as stories from the Tales series goes, I've seen all of Vesperia, not the definitive edition, but the original, Excelia 1 and mostly 2, Sistralia, Visceria, and Arise. And I always find myself liking the Abyss story more than any of them. From like I said earlier, the themes of why I am here and what is my purpose honestly really sets an emotion in me. And what I really like about Abyss than any other games is the fact that in Abyss, each party member has his or her own rival or nemesis for the whole game. They're not one and done bosses. They continue to appear throughout the game that are called the God Generals, as each one of them infects each party member in some way or form throughout the story, as they continuously attack them, as most of their final battles are just amazing story-wise. Especially Luke's rival Ash. Just a great dynamic overall. There's so much I would love to say about this story, but I just don't want to spoil it for anyone that hasn't played it. From lores to the scroll and great character development, it's definitely one of my favorites. Heck, it even got itself its own anime, just like Symphonia, but generally the game is a lot better. As I'm just thinking about this game, I'm over here just thinking to myself, I need to give myself a PlayStation 2 emulator and just do a playthrough with Abyss, as my hacked 3DS doesn't have really the streaming capabilities to do so. Even though it can, but I don't want it to be like my DK Returns stream, as I tried doing that on my 3DS. So it just might be better just to get it on the PlayStation 2 emulator. Or pray that it gets a remaster, because Nintendo is not selling this game. No one is. And let me be clear, as I don't condone piracy. However, when games are not accessible to the public, like most of the older Tales games are, and when it comes to the 3DS, DS, and Wii U libraries, they're not accessible anymore. Just wanted to throw that out there before anybody starts roasting me in the comments or something. But I hope just by talking about it, it got some of you to want to just pick it up and try it, as I do consider this as the best Tales game you can play. Heck, I even just found out the developers from Symphonia were the ones that made this game. And after playing Symphonia and experiencing Abyss, I have to say they were on something, like, seriously. But in all seriousness, consider picking up Abyss, give it a try, and I hope you like it. Okay, but in all honesty, I just wanted an excuse to talk about Abyss. Thank you all for watching. This is not the type of video that I usually do, but consider sticking around if you like playthroughs, as I'm going to be starting a new one soon. Thanks for watching.